Hi, friends. My name is Kenton Whitman, and together with my family, we aim to share wilderness skills, mindfulness practices, wild edible plants, family adventures, and skills that break you free from the limits of civilized life. Join us by subscribing to our channel and joining our YouTube family. Hello, my friends. I'm out in one of my favorite little valleys here, and I'm filming a video for the Satorian Insiders League, a Patreon page that I started for becoming Dungeon Master and people that want to go more deeply into that. And as I walk out here and I think about the last few days, I am astounded by the abundance that I am experiencing in nature. This has come in many forms this spring and this summer. The golden oyster mushrooms have been just falling off the trees. We cannot keep up with them. The wild edibles are just, I've never seen them like this. There are more things growing and sprouting, so many edible things, that even people that only have a little bit of knowledge of wild edibles, I think, are finding themselves able to derive a good portion of their nourishment from foraging this year. It is, I don't know how to describe it except for super, super abundant. Now, at the same time that we have this abundance, I peek in once in a while into the human world through news channels, and I see a lot of lack and a lot of challenges being spoken about. This is no surprise. This is always going on in the news, because that always is and always has been going on in the world. We just live in an age now where we can pick out those instances more and more and feed them into our minds. But here's the interesting thing. A stark difference between the messaging that's happening in what I'm going to call the human world and the experience of abundance that, at least in my little corner of nature, is a very different reality. So, what's going on here? Why these huge differences in what the world can look like? And we can draw some conclusions from that, some ideas and thoughts. But I think the most important thing to notice is how this affects us. Because almost all of us are tuned into that human world to some level. And when we are, that affects our moods, it affects our ideas, it affects our thoughts, it affects our actions. When I think of the world as stressful, as falling apart, as whatever, as lacking, I live very differently than if we had forest monks out here right now. They would know nothing of those troubles, and they would just be experiencing a life of abundance. And their minds would be very different. Because when I'm living in tune right now with what nature's presenting, I feel like a very different person than if I sit down for a half hour and intake the news. You can imagine the purveyors of these news programs, of YouTube channels, where they're giving these dire warnings all the time. And we can imagine, we can't be inside of them, so we can't know. Maybe they're totally zenned out. But we can imagine that if we were feeding that out, that not only would that cause a stress inside of us, but we would know somewhere inside of us that we're delivering a diet of stress and self-harm and of a negative mindset to the world. So the problems that we may be warning against are problems that we are party to creating. And this happens whenever we take on our culture's favored mindset, which is a mindset of fear. All of us over the past years probably have felt ourselves fall into that mindset of fear and sometimes be almost devoured by it. And we probably have been putting it back out to the people around us. And if we step back, we probably can see the results. We can see and remember the effect that that had. What if we, the famous quote, Gandhi, right? Be the change we wish to see. What if we think and live differently? What if we live abundantly, even if we have fear of not having abundance? What if we give a little bit more of ourselves and our resources, even if we feel like our money is being sucked up by the high gas prices right now? We might find that we not only change our own mindset and change other people's mindsets, but we make the world a little bit better place through our actions of generosity and giving. I've had my own challenges in this arena lately. So I launched Becoming Dungeon Master and super excited about it. And I just haven't seen the energy that I was hoping would revolve around it. Not really reviews coming in. There's some sales. Thank you everybody who's purchased it. Not really seeing reviews coming in. The Patreon page that I created is just starting up and not really getting momentum yet. If I think in the human mindset, that could bring me down. Or I could see that I can put this out into the world. I'm going to give it a month or two and put myself into it because I do believe in it and I think it could make some huge changes in people's lives. And if it doesn't, maybe I'm wrong and I can shift. My daughter, Mirabelle, as you probably know, loves horses and has been looking for maybe a horse mentor, be the best way to put it. Someone who could take her on as a protege, as an apprentice, who would see the passion and the talent that she has and to really honor it in a friend kind of mentor fashion. Rebecca and I used to have a horse friend like that, and her name was Kathy, and she was amazing, and she gave us entrance into a world very generously, very lovingly, and she became a dear, dear friend to us in that process, and to each other, so that we loved each other very greatly. When I look at the current situation, she's taking some lessons, and it's with a great teacher, but it's not the personal connection that she's really searching for. And if I think about it with my fearful human mind, I can get down about that. Or I can watch the world, I can believe, I can say, you know what? The perfect thing might appear. And it may not be right now in the timeline that I'm envisioning, but at some point that's probably going to unfold for her. And maybe in a more beautiful way than I can imagine up in my mind. So a lot of what happens when we're in a fear-based mindset is we want to control the world. That's where that fear comes from. That whole human world of spouting out fear, it comes from a desire to control, to have the world look a certain way. And to have us see the world in a certain way. It's very financially lucrative to have you and I live in fear and to come back to those sources of fear again and again, because fear also gives you the illusion that if you come back, it's going to somehow alleviate that fear. But of course it doesn't. It just feeds us more fear. When we say, you know what? We don't know what tomorrow brings. The aliens could come tomorrow. The meteor could hit tomorrow and squash the earth. So today, we live as beautifully as we can. And we say, human world, you have your messaging. That's great. Maybe I'll tune into it once in a while, keep myself informed. But that messaging, if that becomes my whole mindset, I'm going to live so differently. You're probably feeling challenged in some way, like I am, numerous places in my life, I just mentioned two, into feeling like the world is not looking the way you want it to look right now, the way you imagined it would be. What happens if instead of trying to hold on to that idea of the way it has to be, if we release into the way it is? We can still attempt to change things. There's nothing wrong with trying to change things, right? I'm gonna still try to talk to you and encourage you to check out Becoming Dungeon Master and to send it to people who maybe feel like the world, this mundane world we live in, there's something behind it. There's something there that we've all felt and experienced. And this book could give people a way to find it. So I'm going to keep encouraging. I'm going to keep trying to do some social media presence stuff and get it out there. But it may not end up looking the way that I desire it to look. And that's okay. Because one thing I have learned in my life thus far is that we become liberated, emancipated, once we step back from trying to force the world. So aim your arrow. Aim it with skill. Aim it with power. But if it doesn't hit the target, shoot another arrow. And enjoy the process of the shooting as if you're a Zen archer. It's not even the target and the arrow landing in the center that is important. It's the drawing back of the bow, the feeling in our arms and our back. It's that delight in the tension, in that moment before the release. And in watching the arrow, almost magically, fly through the air and land wherever it's going to land. This is what happens when we step out into nature a little bit, and we start living with a nature mindset. And it may be that in your parts of the world, nature is not that abundant right now. But probably the birds are still making nests, plants are still growing, waves are still crashing up upon the shore. And nature, in its quiet way, is doing its thing. And it is evolving and changing to the changes in the world that are happening, as it always has, through extinctions and meteorite impacts and ice ages. Nature goes about its process with that slow, beautiful patience of recognizing what is, moving towards a goal, but doing it adaptively, doing it in a way that does not try to force the world. If we can live like this, great gifts are waiting for us and for those around us. You will literally be a different person. I will literally be a different person if I live with this nature mindset permeating my thoughts, moving my actions. If you can't get out into nature, I have videos on here where you can, some of the nature meditations and things like that, or just any of the videos, try to tune out my talking and just hear all the other voices around me, the wind, the birds, the sunlight, the shadow. So many languages being spoken, but these languages are all saying the same thing. They're all saying something very different than the human messaging. So, as best you can, this might be a moment to tune in to that messaging, the nature messaging, to see what happens when it permeates your being. All right, my friends, thank you for spending this time with me. I'm always grateful. And I'm even more grateful when I get to read your comments down below and to communicate with you through those. So leave comments, thoughts, ideas. It'll be wonderful to talk with you down there. So much love to all of you.